On the muddy flats of Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, the land stretches out under a heavy sky, its silence broken only by the distant calls of crows and the lowing of cattle. Here, the air carries more than just the scent of earth and livestock. It holds secrets, and a chill that seeps into your bones. Something darker lingered here, festering on a ramshackle pig farm owned by Robert Pickton, a place where decay and neglect seemed to swallow the light. He was quiet, odd, a man who kept to himself, but no one imagined the horror that lay just beneath the surface of his ordinary life. The story began with disappearances, women vanishing from Vancouver's downtown east side, a neighborhood already haunted by hardship and loss. They were mothers, daughters, sisters, each with their own story, living on society's margins and often overlooked by those in power. Their absence was barely noticed by the world at large, except by the families left behind. Families who waited by the phone, clung to hope, and searched for answers that never seemed to come. The city offered few clues. The women seemed to vanish without a trace, as if swallowed by the night itself. But they hadn't simply disappeared. They'd been taken, lured away from the city's lights to a place where no one was watching. This wasn't the work of a criminal mastermind hiding in shadows, but of someone hiding in plain sight, blending into the background. Pickton operated in plain sight, shielded by indifference, systemic failure, and a community that looked the other way. He was known for his messy farm and the wild, chaotic parties at the Piggy Palace, a makeshift nightclub on his property that drew crowds from all over. Rumors swirled, strange happenings, violence, things that didn't add up. Whispers of danger drifted through the community, but few dared to speak out. Yet for years, these were just whispers, lost in the wind and drowned out by the noise of everyday life. Meanwhile, the number of missing women grew, each poster and case file a silent accusation. The farm itself was a chaotic labyrinth, a maze of barns and debris, perfect for hiding secrets that no one wanted to find. Here, Pickton lived and worked with his brother, luring victims far from the city's eyes into a world where no one could hear them scream. Acts of unimaginable depravity occurred, hidden in the mud and rust, as the farm became a graveyard for the forgotten. For 2 decades, the land kept its secrets buried deep, the truth festering just beneath the surface. The real question, how was this allowed to happen for so long, right under everyone's noses? How did a place like this become the setting for such evil? And how did so many warnings go unheeded? The answers lay beneath the muck, waiting to be unearthed by those willing to look past the surface. This is the story of what was found and what was ignored, of justice delayed and lives forever changed, and how a nation's conscience was stained forever as the shadow over Port Coquitlam finally came to light. Who was Robert Pickton? A name that would one day haunt the headlines, but for years he was just a quiet figure in the background, unnoticed, unremarkable, and almost invisible to those around him. To understand the monster, you must first look at the man. His story begins in the shadows, long before the world knew his name. Born in 1949, Pickton grew up isolated on the family pig farm, withdrawn and awkward. The farm was his whole world, a place where secrets could hide and loneliness could fester. He left school early, working in the family's butchering business, a life steeped in blood and disappearance. The daily grind of slaughter and silence shaped him in ways no one could see. The Picktons were outsiders, their farm a world apart. Neighbors kept their distance, and rumors swirled, but no one looked too closely. After their parents died, Robert and his brother David inherited the property, shifting from farming to salvage and junk. The land became a graveyard of forgotten things, and the brothers grew stranger with time. Then came the parties, ostensibly for the community, but in reality, something much darker. The gatherings drew a rough crowd, and the farm's isolation offered cover for secrets. Pickton was a man of contradictions, sometimes generous, often crude and volatile. He could be charming, but his temper was unpredictable, and his motives were always unclear. He frequented the downtown east side, seeking out sex workers, women living precarious lives, unlikely to be missed. He knew where to find those who had nowhere else to go. He moved between two worlds, preying on the vulnerable. In the city, he was a shadow. On the farm, a ghost. The warning signs were there. In 1997, Pickton was charged with attempted murder after a woman escaped his farm, but the case was dropped. The horror was nearly exposed but slipped away. The key witness was dismissed as unreliable. Her story, harrowing and desperate, was lost in a system that didn't want to listen. Pickton walked free, returning to his old ways. The disappearances continued, each one a silent tragedy. What if that one case had been different? What if someone had listened or cared enough to act? The system's failure gave him license to keep hunting. Each missed opportunity became another open door. He blended in, hiding his darkness behind a mask of rural eccentricity. No one suspected the true danger lurking beneath the surface. The community looked away, and the horror grew. Silence became complicity. Pickton's past was a blueprint for the evil to come. Every chapter of his life pointed toward the darkness he would unleash. The clues were scattered, but no one put them together. The puzzle was there, waiting for someone to see the whole picture, until it was far too late. By the time the truth emerged, the damage was irreversible, and the women kept vanishing. Their stories, like so many warnings, were lost in the darkness he left behind. The Pickton farm was a kingdom of filth, a perfect stage for horror, where the air itself seemed to carry secrets and dread. Acres of mud, junk, and ramshackle sheds surrounded the slaughterhouse, where the line between animal and human was erased, and the stench of decay lingered in every corner. The Piggy Palace, a converted barn, drew a transient crowd with wild parties, loud music, and a haze of drugs and alcohol that masked the darkness lurking beneath. But beneath the chaos, Pickton hunted, moving through the shadows with chilling intent. He lured women from the downtown east side with promises of money, drugs, or shelter, offering hope to those who had little left. Once on the farm, they were trapped, isolated, surrounded by junk, with no escape, their cries swallowed by the vast emptiness of the land. Pickton had total control, subjecting his victims to unspeakable violence, his cruelty knowing no bounds. He disposed of evidence using the tools of his trade, dismembering bodies, feeding remains to pigs, scattering others across the property, erasing every trace with chilling precision. The farm became a graveyard, hiding its secrets in plain sight, as if the land itself conspired to keep the truth buried. This was no amateur operation, it was systematic annihilation, planned and executed with disturbing efficiency. Pickton's methods were efficient, his cruelty unimaginable, his eyes cold and devoid of remorse. For years, the truth played out just miles from the city, hidden behind the ordinary facade of rural life. The horror was real, and it was happening in plain sight, while fear and silence kept the victims invisible. And no one stopped him as the nightmare continued unchecked for years. Vancouver's downtown east side in the 1990s was a place of struggle and survival. Women working the streets were marginalized and invisible. When they began to disappear, only families, friends, and outreach workers noticed. Whispers spread, stories of a creepy pig farmer named Willie, both generous and menacing. Women shared warnings, survival tips, and tales of narrow escapes. The community knew a predator was among them. Advocates pleaded with police, held rallies, and compiled their own lists of the missing. They saw a pattern the authorities ignored. Police dismissed the idea of a serial killer, blaming overdoses or transients. Tips naming Pickton, including from his own employee, were ignored or lost in bureaucracy. The disconnect between the community and police was tragic. The name Pickton circulated, but no one in power listened. The killing continued, and the whispers grew louder, but the women kept vanishing. The investigation into Vancouver's missing women was a case study in failure. Police forces failed to share information or follow leads across jurisdictions. The case fell through the cracks, allowing Pickton to operate unchecked. In 1997, a woman escaped Pickton's farm and accused him of attempted murder, but her testimony was dismissed. The charges were dropped, sending a message: these women's stories didn't matter. Even as tips naming Pickton accumulated, police were slow to act. A direct allegation about a body on the farm led to a limited, fruitless search. Excuses followed: lack of resources, complexity, false tips. For families, these rang hollow. A task force was eventually formed, but by then, too many lives were lost. The trail went cold not because the killer was a ghost, but because the hunters refused to follow. The system's failures were deadly, and the consequences were irreversible. How did Pickton evade capture for so long? He hid in plain sight. He didn't fit the serial killer stereotype: awkward, mumbling, underestimated. His chaotic, filthy farm discouraged visitors and hid evidence. The pigs and junk provided perfect cover for his crimes. Pickton targeted society's most vulnerable, knowing their disappearances would be overlooked. He exploited a broken system, confident no one would look for his victims. Law enforcement failures and dropped charges gave him more time. He wasn't a criminal genius, just a monster thriving in neglect. The real camouflage was society's indifference. For nearly 2 decades, it worked, until the truth finally surfaced. This isn't just Pickton's story, it's the story of the women he murdered. They were mothers, daughters, sisters, individuals with dreams and families. Many were indigenous, highlighting a crisis of violence that continues today. Their families fought to keep their memories alive, demanding answers and justice. When the truth emerged, it brought new pain. Many would never have a grave to visit. The trauma lingers, a permanent scar on Vancouver and Canada. Their voices, once ignored, are the heart of this tragedy. Pickton's downfall began with a firearms warrant in 2002. Police found personal items of missing women, triggering Canada's largest forensic investigation. DNA from 33 women was identified on the farm. Pickton was charged with 26 murders but only tried for 6. The evidence was overwhelming: DNA, remains, witness testimony. The defense claimed Pickton was a scapegoat, but the jury found him guilty. He received life in prison with no parole for 25 years. The Crown dropped the remaining charges, sparking outrage among families. For many, justice felt incomplete. The legal saga ended, but the wounds remained. The Pickton case left a scar on Canada, exposing deep societal failures. It forced a reckoning with police accountability and the treatment of marginalized women, especially Indigenous women. Inquiries and reports condemned the systemic bias and failures. Some reforms followed, but for many, it was too late. Families turned grief into activism, demanding change and remembrance. The farm is gone, but the memory haunts the land. The real horror monsters thrive when society chooses not to see. The question remains, could it happen again?